Okay, guys, it's now 7:30. Before we go over to Aoife, I'm just going to recap on the poll questions. So the poll question was, are you familiar with P2P lending? This poll has 19 votes. 14 people are familiar. 5 people, I'm guessing, have never heard of P2P. And this, as I said, will lead nicely into the next presentation. Aoife, our next speaker, is from Prudence Moneypenny Coaching. Very qualified, and Aoife will cover budgeting through to expenses, leading on to P2P investing as a tool to achieve FIRE. And I'm handing control over now to you, Aoife. Gaffney, host control. Okay, over to you, Aoife. You should have that now. You can screen share.
I do indeed. Thank you very much. I just see actually we have somebody in the waiting room, so I'm just going to admit them. And let me share my screen. Oops, there we go. You are all very welcome, and thank you for coming to this event. While I'm sharing my screen, actually, I can't see the chat, so I'm just going to ask somebody else to keep an eye on the questions. And if you can see my screen, just if somebody could unmute themselves and say, yes, you can see it, that'd be great.
Yeah, we can see you, Aoife.
Okay, that's fantastic. My name is Aoife Gaffney. I run a business, Prudence Moneypenny Coaching, and I work predominantly with women, empowering women to achieve financial freedom and financial independence. Money coaching is slightly different to financial advice. One doesn't replace the other, and in fact, they work in harmony with each other. So I am a certified money coach. I'm also a qualified financial advisor. I just don't really work in the advice space anymore. I now work in the mindset space. So a little bit about me and my journey. Sorry, my slides didn't work there for a second. So I have been on this FIRE journey probably for about 10 years, 10 or 15 years. And it came about when I found myself massively in debt twice, because sometimes we need to make the same mistake over and over again until we learn from our mistakes. So I found myself quite substantially in debt twice, and as the result of breakdown of relationships. And it came about from my inability to communicate properly about money, a lack of knowledge, and a lack of belief in myself that I actually was able to be a financially independent woman. And that came from some of the beliefs that I had when I was growing up. And through coaching, we do a lot of unraveling of our current beliefs. A huge, big, long disclaimer. Yes, I am a qualified financial advisor. I just don't really work in the financial advice space anymore. This presentation is my personal opinion, and it does contain affiliate links. And with any investment decision, I strongly recommend that you sit down one-to-one with a professional and have a minimum of 2 meetings before you make any decisions. And let us not forget buzzword bingo, and you all get a copy of, oh, sorry, not one, it's not the Late Late Show, a copy of this lovely book, Financial Freedom Explained, which I will sign for you. Just let me know if you would like it made out to a particular person or somebody's name on it, but the lucky winner gets that book, and that will go out in the post to you. So there it is, Financial Freedom Explained, and I will be discussing peer-to-peer lending this evening. So mindset is hugely important, and our mindset is 95% of success, and it dictates what we do. It dictates our attitude, that then our behaviors, that then dictates the actions that we take and the results that we get, and the performance, our performance. And when you make a mindset shift, it's like a paradigm shift. The changes are incredible, because if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. Mindset is 95% of success. You can have excuses or you can have results, and you get to choose. That's the really fantastic thing, is that we all have the freedom of choice. And a lot of excuses that I hear from people is, I'm too old to, or I'm too tall to, or I'm too young to, or I don't have enough experience, I don't have enough money, I am not good with money. These are all excuses and beliefs. It's simply a thought process that you have chosen to repeat to yourself. So imagine if you change those thought processes. Imagine the results you'd get if you suddenly started to say, I am capable, I am enough, I am more than enough. So every day I look in the mirror and I say, this is what a wealthy woman looks like. Well, she looks like me. And if you say that to yourself, or is something else that maybe resonates with you, and you say that to yourself every day, the results will be phenomenal. You have two choices. You can make an excuse, or you can change that paradigm, you can change that narrative, change that mindset, and see what happens. And the best bit is that saying all of these lovely things to yourself in the mirror doesn't cost anything. But freedom gives us choice, and freedom means different things to different people. Financial independence and financial freedom mean different things to different people. So my aim is to be financially independent, and I have no intention of retiring. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But for me, freedom is having the ability to choose where I live, the ability to choose what kind of car I drive, where I go on holidays, how often I go on holidays, what I eat, what I don't eat, what I plant in my garden, who I spend my time with. And when I made a huge decision to change my beliefs, incredible things began to happen in my life. So I'm going to ask you a question, and ask yourself this question: what can I choose to believe now? So hopefully at this point, you've realized that financial independence can be achieved by anybody. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what country you're from. It doesn't matter what currency you're in. It doesn't matter how much you earn. It doesn't even matter if you're coming from a standing start or a negative start, because I certainly started from a negative start. And I'm going to ask you another question now. Who here tracks their spending? And I think Dave put it in the straw poll earlier. So one of my favorite tools is a piece of software called You Need a Budget. And it's the only time you'll actually ever hear me say that word budget, because for me, the word budget conjures up images of restriction. Like government policy, like with the stroke of a pen, somebody can make a massive change to government policies. It's a word I'm not particularly mad at. I much prefer the word prudence, or being prudent. So these are just a couple of screenshots from what the software looks like. This is just a sample spending plan. And so I love to use inspiring headings. So if I'm setting up a plan, I call it like wealthy woman, or like abundance, or my financial freedom, instead of words that sort of don't really resonate with me. So instead of having a category for the mortgage, I might have, this is my beautiful home and I'm paying off the loan every day. Again, that doesn't cost anything to change those headings, but it all helps to make these paradigm shifts in your unconscious mind. Here's another screenshot from the You Need a Budget plan, and you can create these amazing reports, and you can get very, very detailed information on where your money is going. The minute you make a spending plan, you're telling your money where you want it to go in advance, not wondering where it went. And that is a huge step in this journey to being financially independent. The minute you become the master of your money, it no longer has power over you. So a simple way to calculate your FIRE number is you take your annual expenses and multiply them by 25. Now, this is a very oversimplified model, but it's a really good starting point. And sometimes when I ask people, what is your financial independence number? And they don't know, but they'll pick a number out of the sky, €1 million. Well, that's fine. If you want €1 million, that's perfectly fine. But when you understand, when your brain understands that there is a logic and a rationale behind the number, it makes the goal much easier to achieve. So let's say my FIRE number is €600,000. and 23 cents. By the way, I can calculate my fire number within an inch of its life. So my brain, I now know that there is a rationale and a logic to that number. So it actually makes it easier to achieve. And it ceases to become about the amount, but more about how was that number arrived at. And so what I like to do is I'll have my lean fire number, and then I'll have my fat fire number. So like, this is the cost of my dream life. What would I like to do? What kind of car would I like to drive? Would I like to have a chef? What sort of things would I like to have in my life? And I'll cost that out and multiply that by 25. And that makes me get quite excited. Now, how you invest your money is hugely dependent on the type of person that you are. But I think one of the biggest factors is how old are you? At what stage of your life are you at? So if you're still going around in collecting your communion money, then you can probably afford to put a larger portion of whatever funds you have available to invest into something a bit more exciting, and a smaller percentage of that fund into something dull and boring. If you're like me and you are past the age of 50, then at this stage, I am making a conscious decision that the funds that I'm putting my money into are a little shorter, and I am choosing slightly tighter strategies, slightly more shorter term strategies, and slightly more conservative and safer. But I'll always keep a certain percentage of my investment portfolio aside to do crazy things with. And if it bombs, it bombs. And if it does really well, then that's fantastic. So let's say I have €100 available to invest, and I'm 51. I'm going to put 51% of that into something fairly dull and boring. So really a useful rule of thumb is have your own age in bonds. And I'm using the term bond quite loosely. And again, that's a rough rule of thumb. But basically, the younger you are, the more aggressive your strategies can be. And it's also important to have different maturity rates. So you create an abundance cycle. So if you have something that, okay, I'll put this in and in 1 year I will get a return, and then in the next thing I'll have money in like a 2 to 3 year strategy, and then something else could be maybe 5 years or more, and something else could be even more long term. So you create a cycle, so there'll always be something maturing at some stage, and then that allows you again the freedom of choice that not everything is locked up for 10 years or 15 years, and that you have funds maturing at different stages. You may be familiar with this, and it's a book that Dave recommended, a book called The Cash Flow Quadrant from Robert Kiyosaki. So here, on this side here, it says most people spend most of their life on this side of the quadrant. So when you are the employee, you have a job, you're trading your time for money, and it's a nice place to be. You go to work and you get paid, and if you're sick, you get paid. And then sometimes people have what's referred to as the entrepreneurial seizure. So they become self-employed, and then you own your job, but often you can become the most underpaid, overworked person. Whereas the real sweet spot is on the right-hand side of the square. You can be the business owner. You own a system, and that could be buying into an existing business. That could be a multi-level marketing business. That could be buying into a franchise. It could be a range of different things. The really, really, really sweet spot is when you are the investor, when money works for you. So it doesn't really matter whether you get out of bed or not. The money is flowing into your life passively. These squares are not mutually exclusive. So you could be all of these, one of these, 2 or 3 of these, but it's really just about, again, making that mindset shift that when money flows into your life, which square is it flowing into your life from? And ideally aim to be moving yourself over onto the right-hand side of the square. So if we take money as a product, so imagine that banks are like a shop and money is stock. So simple economics would dictate that we buy low and sell high. and you make your profit on the bit in the middle. So that's very simple economics. So if you consider the bank as like a shop, and when you put your money on deposit, you are giving the bank money, you're giving the bank stock for them to sell. Which brings me into the 363 rule of banking. And the 363 rule of banking is banking in its very simplified term. So I will put my money on deposit with the bank, and the bank will give me 3% on my return. Somebody will walk into the bank the following day and say, I'd like to borrow some money, and they'll go, no problem at all. Here you go, here is your loan, and we will charge you 6% on that loan. And the bank make their money on the bit in the middle. And everything goes so swimmingly well, and everybody is so happy that all of the bank managers go off and play golf at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, hence the 363 rule of banking. And if you make that shift with yourself, that buy low, sell high concept, and start thinking of yourself like a banker. So again, we're back to the cash flow quadrant. Are you the employee or are you the self-employed person? Or would you like to move over onto the right-hand side where you are the business owner and that's the investor? And when you make that shift in your mind and start thinking like a bank, incredible things start to happen. So the rule of 72 is, again, I don't understand the mathematics behind this. I just know that this rule works. So the rule of 72 is if you take 72 and divide it by the rate of return or whatever interest rate you're getting, that will equal the length of time it will take for your investment to double. Doesn't matter if it's €1 over 10 years or €10 over 1 year, it doesn't matter. This rule works. So at the moment, the best deposit rate that I could find was 0.85%. And now currently inflation is above 1%. So if you have money sitting on deposit, it's actually depleting. So if you have money on deposit, and I said the best deposit rate that I could find was 0.85%, it's going to take me 84.7 years for that money to double. So that's not great. But if I could get about 8%, and 8% actually is pretty good, you can get more, but it'll only take 9 years for that money to double. So I think, that's pretty good. So again, Dave asked a question earlier on, was how many people were familiar with peer-to-peer lending? And there were 1 or 2 no's, but it was good to see that the majority of people have said yes. So I am a big fan of peer-to-peer lending. Now, how peer-to-peer lending works, again, it's the 363 rule of banking. You want to buy low, sell high, and you make your profit on the bit in the middle. So peer-to-peer lending works a little bit like, I like to call it, it's almost like a dating agency for lenders and borrowers. So here we have the lenders. There we go. We have the lenders here. And in most cases with peer-to-peer, there are multiple lenders for each borrower. So this could be 10, 20, 30 people who all put their money into a pool. It all goes into the peer-to-peer lending company, who's the man in the middle, and they then lend it out to the borrowers at whatever rate of interest, depending on the credit. The borrower then repays the loan. The money comes back into the peer-to-peer lending company. They take the percentage off the top, which is perfectly fine because everybody needs to get paid. And then the funds are paid out back into the borrowers and they make a profit. And then as a lender, you can take that money and run, or you can put it back into the pool and lend it to somebody else. So money needs to flow. For an economy to flourish, money needs to flow. Money, it's made round to go around. So the only real way to make money is to actually keep it moving. And ironically, you spend your way to wealth rather than save your way to wealth. So these are some screenshots from, and they are sample screenshots. So these figures are genuine, but they are actually sample numbers. So this is a rather interesting screen here. And here we have, this person has invested a total of, this person has deposited a total of €200. They are supporting 13 loans. This is the interest that they've earned. Their account value is here. And you see here, there's the lender's fee is there. So that's quite clear. clear and transparent. But the real number that's very interesting is this one. So the amount of money that this person has lent in total is 700 euro. So they've actually only put 200 into the peer-to-peer lending platform, but as each loan was getting paid, it was being lent out again. So again, the money, it just keeps moving. And generally with peer-to-peer, you can start with 50 euro. So their account balance is the, yes, the amount available to lend for this person here is 16 euro and 99 cent, which is why this little triangle here is saying that the balance is low, because it will lend out when this amount gets to a minimum of 50. So this is the other half of that screen. So here we can see that the monthly payments are coming in, a bid has been made on a loan, and these are the monthly payments coming in. And it's one of the big pluses of peer-to-peer is that you will see results generally within about 30 to 35 days of your initial loan being made. So there are 6 of these loans have been repaid in total, and there are 7 currently in repayment. This is another screen. Again, these are genuine peer-to-peer lending businesses. These are sample numbers. So this is an account that was fairly recently set up. So this person has deposited a 500. The available balance is 200. They have invested 250. So they have lent out 250. Well, there's 50 euro there sitting as a live bid, ready to be accepted. So the 6 campaigns in total. And here the average interest rate across the 6 campaigns is 8.43. So if we come back to the rule of 72, I think I said it was going to take 9 years at a rate of interest of 8%. It was going to take 9 years for that money to double. So this is just a range of returns from one company. So these credit ratings are allocated by the peer-to-peer lending company, and they do a due diligence. They will look at the business plan. They will look at a lot of aspects of the business that approaches the peer-to-peer lending business. So they will put them through the ringer as such, and how they achieve these credit ratings, that information is confidential because they're internal processes and procedures. But I can see here that a company that looks to borrow money for 6 months and is deemed an A+ credit rating, as a lender, I will get a return of 6%. A Y credit rating is generally a business maybe that would be slightly higher risk or doesn't really have a proven strategy. And if I lend money to that business for 60 months, I could get a return of 17.5%. But the range of returns is between 6% and 7.5%. In my own personal portfolio, I don't lend past 2 years, and I don't lend past a B credit rating. That's my own personal strategy. Again, here is another range of returns, different company, similar range of returns. So we have, but they have a slightly different credit ratings. They have A+ and A, and B+ and B. But the range of returns is from 6.25 up to 16.3, depending on the length of time that the money is being lent for. So the benefits of peer-to-peer lending, the good stuff. The benefits are that if you choose a peer-to-peer lending company in your own country, you are lending in your own currency, and you're also keeping the money in your own economy. And it's nice to be able to support a local business. You'll start to see the returns within about 30 days. It's fairly easy to set up, and they generally have low entry points. The entry point is usually in and around 50 euro. And you can have an element of autonomy, or you can set up, which is the way I do it, with auto bids, because I don't really have time to be going in and manually checking, will I lend this to that person or not? So I set up what are called auto bids. The points to ponder. Yes, the business could fail, and I've taken a bit of a hammering actually this year because I had positions in hospitality. But even when I take all of the losses into account, I'm still averaging about 6%. Other points to ponder is you need to declare it on your own tax return. So tax is not deducted at source. And whether you declare it to revenue or not is between you and your conscience. But I always say declare all of your income all of the time, and then it's easier to sleep at night. There are other risks, but there is a difference between something between a calculated risk and something being risky. So I go into peer-to-peer lending with my eyes open. I do my own due diligence, and I strongly recommend that you do your own due diligence as well. If you want to know more, I really recommend this book. I think there's a program about him on Channel 4 or 4OD or whatever it's called. And it's a guy called Dave Fishwick who set up a peer-to-peer lending business in Burnley in England. And he's a very easy writing style. He's quite humorous. It's very easy to understand. Probably available on Amazon. Highly recommend that book, and highly recommend actually just following him as a story, as a person. Very entrepreneurial, very innovative, and an interesting man, self-made millionaire. So a couple of more words of wisdom and something that I do need to point out. Peer-to-peer lending is currently not regulated by the central bank. Now, not regulated doesn't mean bad. It doesn't mean there's anything sinister about it. It just means that currently the central bank have not come up with a set of rules that they feel comfortable applying to the peer-to-peer lending industry. There is strong lobbying taking place, and it's not that the central bank are not aware of it. There's nothing underhand about it. It's just that nobody has come up with a set of policies and procedures that everybody is in agreement with. And your investments are not covered by the Deposit Guarantee Scheme or the Investor Compensation Scheme in Ireland. And that it is just important to say that, but there's nothing sinister about it. If you'd like to book a 15-minute complimentary strategy call with me, just follow this link, prudencemoneypenny.com/askpru, and my diary is available there. So you can just book yourself in for a 15-minute complimentary chat. And I'm just going to leave this slide up. So just some very useful links. If you want to do some due diligence, the central bank website is very good. There's the CCPC, which is the Consumer Competition Protection Commission, I think. My own personal favorite planning software is prudencemoneypenny.com/YNAB. That is an affiliate link, but that software has a 34-day free trial. And it's the only time you'll ever hear me say the word budget, as I personally prefer to use the word prudent instead, or wealth building strategy or personal spending plan. The Fire HQ website is absolutely fantastic. And then the link there if you would like to book a complimentary call with me. And I'm just keeping an eye on the clock here. So with 2 minutes to go, I'm just going to knock off my screen share and pop back into the main room. So are there questions? I couldn't actually see the chat while I was in screen share mode. So just one second. Now I see a few questions. Where am I going? Yeah, okay, somebody said, yeah, linked finance and Flender. Yeah, the reason I didn't state them is because I don't recommend one over the other. Where am I going here? How much is the tax on profit gained peer-to-peer? At the moment, it would appear, again, I always say, there's no harm to get your own tax advice. My research would tell me that it falls under capital gains, which means that you can earn up to €1,270 a year tax-free. And if it's tax-free, I'm always first in the queue. You can carry losses forward, but you can't carry any unused credit forward. So, where possible, try to make sure that you earn that €1,270 a year tax-free. What are my thoughts on group here? I have no experience of group here, so I don't know. Is there PRSI and USC payable on profits? Vincent, again, according to my research, it falls under the capital gains bit of your tax return. So social insurance, and USC are not payable. And it's not PAYE because that is when you trade your time for money. What is the default rate for loans? Well, up until pre-2020, the default rate was next to nothing. Because there were quite a lot of positions in hospitality, so that hasn't been spectacular. So the default rate, I'd say, is probably slightly skewed. I'd have to work it out because I have different positions in different companies, so I'd have to work it out. But in general, the default rate is below 1% because of the hoops and hurdles that the peer-to-peer lending platforms put the potential borrowers through. What are my thoughts on selecting a peer-to-peer? So is that selecting a platform or is that selecting a business, Brian? I'm not sure. But if you want to book a complimentary call with me, platform. Personal preference. I like small, low entry points. So to my knowledge, there are 2, 3, 4, I think, peer-to-peer lending companies in Ireland. One of them have pulled out of the retail space. It's personal preference. They all have slightly different platforms. They all have slightly different criteria. Try it. The entry point is about €50. If you don't like it, don't stick with it. If you like it, add more. Personal preference. Brian, I hope that answers your question. Any other questions? Keep them coming, and I'll hang around for a little bit afterwards if anybody would like to ask me anything else.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you, Aoife. If you don't mind if I cut in there for a moment. Okay, listen, fantastic. And Aoife, I think that was amazing for myself personally anyway, and really, really enjoy your presentation. Massive well done for me. And that one's really close to my own heart. And I tell you why, because the discussion around mindset, managing the internal dialogue, in our minds, and whilst creating that abundance mindset that you spoke about, I think it's absolutely key, and it was a very empowering presentation. There is a couple of questions that came in prior to the presentation. If you could take a few before we break.
Yep, no problem at all.
Perfect. So one question that came in around P2P is, are there any risks involved, Aoife?
Yes, there's risk. There's risk with everything, and in fact, I even discuss the risks in this lovely book here, this very nice book that is available to purchase on Amazon. So I see there is a difference between risk and risky. There is a risk with getting out of bed in the morning. There is a risk crossing the road. That there's a risk. I poked myself in the eye with my mascara today. Like this, there's a risk in everything. So for me, risk is something that I have worked out, that I've worked out the risks and I'm willing to do it, whatever the thing is. Risky is crossing the road with your eyes closed. Actually, to me, risky, believe it or not, is doing lottery, because I don't gamble. Well, because I don't gamble because I don't know how. Everything has risk, but it's up to you to calculate those risks and just make sure that they sit right with your values.
Good answer. Perfect. Some might argue that the risk is not investing in anything at all.
Yeah.
Another question that came in is from a viewer that's actually not based in Ireland. They said, outside of Ireland, Aoife, what options would they have?
But there's generally a peer-to-peer company in your country. The Linked Finance and Flender are both euro-based, so you don't have to be in Ireland. There's Mintos, which I haven't had a great experience with. There's Groupier, haven't a clue, know nothing about Groupier. If you're in England, there are loads. So there's tons and tons of peer-to-peer